Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by the members of GrandTheftWorld.com. Welcome. This is episode 105. It is November 6th, 2022. And we got stories this week for the next 6 or 7 hours. We're going to break apart the week's news. We're going to juxtapose the current events and smash it into some contextual history. We got a lot of nice artifacts and reference sources lined up for the stories that are going to come about tonight. Stories like Paul Pelosi opened the door on new parts of people questioning that whole ordeal that happened a couple weeks ago. Of course, he was tragically attacked by someone who broke into his house. And then ever since then, the story has continued to change. We thought there was a third person, according to police reports. And now police reports have shown through a censored TV report this past week.
In an earlier story, Politico mentions an unknown person opened the door to police. Now NBC is reporting a different narrative.
After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi. The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home, but instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police.
We still don't know exactly what unfolded between Mr. Pelosi and the suspect for the 30 minutes they were alone inside that house before police arrived. Officials who were investigating this matter would not go into further details about these new details.
Except then NBC News removed this report with an editor's note saying it did not meet its reporting standards. Do they mean standards or directives? How is a nudist activist able to get past Capitol Police enhanced security for the third in line to the president's home? Just the News notes Capitol Police had a live video feed going but didn't notice a break-in. The quickest way to dispel any conspiracy theories would be to release body cams and the security footage. But will we ever see it?
And I think this is the most important point about all of this, which is how many millions of people have been conditioned to believe that it's immoral or even some kind of reflection of mental illness, like you're a conspiracy theorist, if you don't immediately and unquestionably accept whatever story is told to you by institutions of authority. And the amazing thing about that, Tucker, is that this framework is being constructed by journalists, people whose primary purpose in life is supposed to be to question and challenge the claims of the powerful, and instead they're demonizing anybody who does so. Skepticism itself can never be wrong. Skepticism says there's evidentiary holes and there's faulty reasoning in what we're being told. Even if evidence does emerge later on to prove it, the skepticism itself was not just valid, but necessary.
As well as the Kanye saga. He apparently doubled down this past week and gave a little shout out to his former trainer. So now it brings a new light on the speculations that he's been chastised for over the past couple of weeks. So we're going to take a look at that incendiary news in depth.
Let's talk about Kanye West. We have this tweet. Kanye says, what should be obvious by now is that I was raised to stand for my truth regardless of the consequences. So I will say this again. I was mentally misdiagnosed and nearly drugged out of my mind to make me a manageable, well-behaved celebrity. Here's a text he posted from someone named Harley that says, I'm going to help you one of a couple ways. First, you and I sit down and have an loving and open conversation, but you don't use cuss words, and everything that is discussed is based in fact and not some crazy stuff that dumb friend of yours told you or you saw in a tweet. Second option, I have you institutionalized again where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same.
Wow. That's evil.
That's insane, man. That's scary stuff.
Also, there's an upcoming diesel shortage, which we heard about a couple weeks ago. We covered it, and we were hoping it was going to go away. It looks like it still might be there. Now there's some home heating oil because that's diesel fuel, and other shortages in some cities expected to be up to a couple days. And if that happens, it could be signs of things to come because I don't think they're fixing the system. So it might be more of a long-term problem.
What will that mean if we run out of these distillates in the middle of winter? Mike Taylor is the owner of Combined Energy Services. He joins us tonight. Mike, thanks so much for coming on. So what will that look like exactly?
Well, Tucker, I'm hearing from our suppliers that it seems like we're walking a fine tightrope on home heating oil and diesel supply. I can really only speak to the Northeast. They're telling me that in reserves, we're at 60% of a 5-year average. All of our heating oil in the Northeast, most of it comes out of the Philadelphia market, Linden, New Jersey. Good news is a refinery in Paulsboro, New Jersey is coming back online. Produces, I understand, 105 million barrels a day. So that's going to help the Northeast. All of our oil comes out of that region, floats up through the New York harbor, and that supplies New England. We've already seen curtailments and shortages up on the Hudson River terminals. That was early October. Our suppliers are really saying it's a fine tightrope that if we have a drastically cold winter, could be trouble.
Could be trouble in supposedly the richest, most developed nation in the world. We're afraid of winter. So what would that mean for prices for heating oil and kerosene, by the way, which a lot of poor people use in their trailers? What would that look like in February?
No question. Already, we've seen the last 2 years, home heating oil is up over $3.50 a gallon. Retail home heating oil in the Northeast is over $6 a gallon today. Kerosene, when we can get it, is at $7. As we've spoken in the past, mobile homes use kerosene. It's very hard to get right now, and it's going to be unaffordable. The climate change agenda in the Northeast, Tucker, is what's causing this. Of course, across the country, demonization of fossil fuels. But in New York State, New Jersey, we're on fast track to try to eliminate fossil fuels with no alternatives that anybody can afford.
The Amnesty article. Oh, geez. There was so much story about one story. It got ratioed. So the Atlantic had a story that says, hey, maybe we should have amnesty for the people who said quarantines, lockdowns, mandates during the pandemic. And then they got a social response that I think was quite opposite of what they were looking for. And we're going to look into the dictionary tonight, see what amnesty actually means and under what circumstances it might offer justice to the people who were adversely affected by those policies.
Our top story today, this absolute banger from the Atlantic. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. We need to forgive one another for what we did and said when we were in the dark about COVID. What is this, a Snickers commercial? Yo, I'm sorry for what I said when I was hungry. Oh, no worries, dude. I'm sorry I wished death upon your toddler when she open-mouth sneezed in a Costco. What? I don't think so. And what is this about amnesty anyway? Did we miss the part where somebody apologized to us? I mean, amnesty by definition means a pardon for a political offense, and I don't recall anyone asking me for a pardon. I don't recall any form of repentance. So as far as I know, there will be nothing moving forward other than accountability. And who's to say what the punishment should be? I think we should leave that up to the angry mob.
Look. They want everybody to forget and forgive everything that happened during the pandemic. We were all in the dark. We were all afraid. Like, nah, bitch. Like, that was like we all got kidnapped and put together on an island, and then all of y'all bastards were like, we should eat them. And we're like, what the fuck? And then now they took us off the island, and we're just looking at you on the ride home like, and you're like, oh, wasn't that crazy? And we're like, nah, bitch. You tried to eat us. I didn't kick you out of no stores. I didn't ruin your job. I didn't tell you you couldn't come to the family reunion. I didn't tell you you had to drop dead of a heart attack because you didn't get the jab, so you're not welcome at this hospital. There ain't nothing to forgive on my side, baby boo. This is a you problem, and we're still talking about it.
We have special guest tonight, G. Edward Griffin, author extraordinaire. He's the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. If you've never read that book, you've never looked into the interviews behind that book, fascinating history. So we're going to have a little time tonight with Ed.
I awoke to this thing in 1960. That was when the first red pill showed up. And but it was practically January, February of 1960. So that was my starting point. I can usually figure it out if I think.
What was the red pill in January 1960?
What was it?
Yeah. What red pilled you?
Well, it was an amazingly small, unimpressive pamphlet that I picked up somewhere. And it was called, I think the title of it was The Truth About the United Nations. Okay, the truth. Well, I knew the truth because I studied it in school. I knew that it was our last best hope for peace. I knew that they saved lives and they cared about me and human rights and all these things. But little did I know that there was another side to this story, and that it was in this little pamphlet written by a college professor in some Midwestern college I hadn't heard of, little college. And Richard, I was very upset by the pamphlet. I thought it was garbage. How could he say these bad things about this great, positive humanitarian institution called the United Nations? But caused me to do a little research. I actually went to the library on my own, didn't have an assignment. I just went because I wanted to check some of these things out that were mentioned in the pamphlet. And by golly, when I really checked them out, found out that they were true, and that these guys at the United Nations had great slogans and they knew how to sell a product, but it was bait and switch. And when I discovered that, that was my first red pill. It was really hard for me to swallow.
Well, much credit goes to you, not for the pamphlet, but for your activity in being incredulous and then going to the library, going through some trouble to look it up so you could have a more accurate picture of the world. Mm-hmm. And as we know today from books like this, The United Nations Global Straitjacket by Joan Vion, we know that there's a lot to the arguments that you probably saw in the early 60s, because it's not a good American organization. It's international territory in New York City, donated by the Rockefellers, and their architect built the building. And it's an Anglo-American globalist establishment. And as always, we're going to go to Luke Rodowski of We Are Change and bestpoliticalshirts.com. And we're going to see his weekly summary. I got to warn you, what you're about to hear is not fun sounds. It's a clip he plays at the beginning. Funny. So if you want to hang in there, cool. If you want to turn it down just a little bit right now for the next 10 seconds, go ahead.
Holy fucking shit, you guys! You wanna know why? I'm going to your car with this kind of notification! We're not going to have our time! Maybe we can have the conversation about it! I'm just here getting it! You can see it! You're fucking leader! Maybe we can talk about it!
You know, a lot of people have their predictive models, political charts, and data to what's going to be happening in these upcoming midterm elections, but I think this one was the best one.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions. We can get into the show, we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man.